Let's do our first throwing techniques with the Hanbo.
This is the Kitsune clan, a group of sword enthusiasts who like cosplay, reenactment, and historical martial arts. If you have similar interests, feel welcomed.
We have now derived so many different things already with the Hanbo, and we can really show all the movements with the Hanbo so far are interconnected and depending on each other. And now we finally come to the first throwing techniques. And that doesn't mean that I throw around my Hanbo. It means I throw my opponent with the Hanbo. And there are different ways of approaching that. And I've pointed that out already, and I will make this more explicit here in this case. We will start with a set of 4 very simple throwing techniques first, and they are all related to a throwing technique from Bujinkan that is called Ganseki-Nage, throwing a big rock, translating something like that. Let's look at that first and how we get there. If we think about it, if we have an attacker coming and we defend as if it would be an angle 1 with our Hanbo, then we had already disarms and arm locks, and we would have seen that the arm lock is, so to say, a bit closer to the opponent than it was the disarm. And now we can bring this one step further. What happens if we do the same type of motion that we did with the arm lock, but close into the opponent further? Or, more likely situation, I want to do the arm lock, but the opponent is coming more at me in this very moment, so I want to do the arm lock, but the opponent is closing in. What happens then? And then happens the throwing technique, and that's Ganseki-Nage. So it's the same motion as the arm lock, and also it feels often like an arm lock. And also, if you look at weaponless variants of Ganseki-Nage performed, especially in videos from the 70s and 80s, they often look like arm locks and not so much like throwing techniques. The important part here is that I use the stick to trap the arm of the opponent behind my own head. So the arm of the opponent is squeezed between my head and the stick, and that's painful. This is really something, if this throw does not happen, the opponent will have likely a damaged arm because I strike from below upwards against his upper arm and squeeze it in. For training purposes, I really suggest that you do that slowly and give your training partner a chance to properly fall to the ground. This is basically a hip throw technique without a lot of guidance, so I would not suggest to do that with somebody who is untrained in the way we do it here. Usually we suggest that the person uses the left hand to grasp somewhere on the thrower so that the falling person can guide his or her own fall. In reality, we don't leave the time to the attacker to do things like that, but that's not what this is about. Okay, Ganseki-Nage, that's a very, very classical throwing technique. And now let's guess what's happening. If we do the same thing on the other 4 angles, we will get additional throws. And these throws basically come to the 4 possibilities of throwing. Like Ganseki-Nage, I'm throwing in my direction of view, and I'm also throwing the opponent in his direction of view. And you can already see where this is going. I can also throw in my direction of view, where the opponent is not thrown in his direction of view. And this is what's happening on angle 2. If we do our normal motion in angle 2 and closing in, we are throwing him backwards, but for me, forwards. And now you can already guess what's happening in angle 3 and 4. We will throw the opponent backwards from our point of view, and once backwards in his point of view, and once forwards in his point of view. And these ones are more tricky, in fact, because the first 2 ones, angle 1 is a hip throw. That's super easy. Angle 2, this is Osoto Gari or Osoto Otoshi or Osoto Goshi, whatever. But you know, it's a very, very common type of throw in most martial arts. If we look at angle 3, this is not so common. This is, in many martial arts, we don't see that throw very often. In Aikido, we have it. It's Sokumen Iriminage. And in fact, in German longsword fencing, this is the most common throw. That's the back throw, how they call it. And in judo terms, this is somewhere around Tani Otoshi, but we usually keep it standing. You can go to the ground like classical Tani Otoshi here. Sometimes you need assistance, and that's then a throw from Aikido and judo that is called Sukui-Nage, where I use my hands to grasp the legs of the opponent to support the throw. And that will be important for angle 4. We will see in a moment. So I grasp the legs. How do I do that? Do I have to lift the opponent up? No. By moving in our technique, we can basically have the opponent sitting on our thigh. And then there's no weight anymore on the legs, and I can pull the legs away. In this case, with the stick. That would also be painful, by the way, if there would still be weight on the legs. And I can throw the opponent either backwards or sideways in front of me. I can also just do it with a single leg. In any case, it's very, very important that I drag out my stick during the throw so that the opponent does not fall on my stick. In a self-defense situation, you could argue, yeah, who cares? I want to keep my stick. I want to keep control over my stick, and therefore also in such a situation, I would drag out the stick. Now angle 4. This is a tricky one, and this is also one of the rare ones if we look at that. The mechanics here would demand that I throw backward and the opponent forward. And that's the most suboptimal situation for throwing. And therefore, there are also not so many throws in this direction. In judo, there are some, but they require very, very special mechanics. These throws are shown in some of the German fencing books. Then they usually require to lift the opponent really up. It's possible to really move into the opponent and apply the throw with enough force and inertia, yes. But in most cases, I will run into the opponent like that, and then I will not make it to the throw. It's simply a problem that my back is not super flexible towards the backward motion, but the opponent is very, very flexible in this way because he can lean forward. Therefore, I have not so much force that I can apply to his back. Therefore, here, the aspect of, in addition, grasping the legs is very, very important. And I can grasp both legs or one leg. In a lot of situations, I will just grasp one leg, but with two I have more power. With two, I can really lift him up. This is almost like in a suplex motion. I can generate a lot of force. With two legs, I can also drag to the side, similar to the Sokoinage, but it's much more fun to really throw the opponent backwards, especially with one leg. Very powerful. Tell your opponent to look how to fall easily or securely. Give him the opportunity to grab around your legs to guide his or her own fall. Otherwise, you might hurt each other. As we have discussed it for angle 3, it's of course also possible to make a sacrificial throwing technique here, so to go to the ground as well. This could be a version of Tawara Guruma, so that you throw the opponent over yourself, but you are very, very low here. So what most likely would happen if you try to pull the legs away from the opponent with your stick and at the same time go to the ground, in most cases, the opponent will fall onto his or her face and you drop on top. So you can try to train that with a very, very soft mat, but it's hard. And the most likely version of this type of throw is really grasping the leg and casting the opponent over your leg backwards. You can see already, throwing with the stick is a lot of fun. It's a bit scary at first. It's well possible. This is something a lot of people tend to forget, that there is things like throwing techniques with a sword, with a knife, and with a stick. There's much more of that than most people anticipate, and we will see that more often. We will explore that also further in future videos. This is just a very first taste, but it gives you something that you can explore for yourself. I would really start with Ganseki-Nage and his other three relatives here. And I also think if you train Bujinkan, similar styles, Ganseki-Nage in his weaponless form is always a bit strange. But if you have thrown the person here in Ganseki-Nage, that really, really works out. We've also shown here that there is application beyond the base form here. I did not comment too much now on it. We just showed it here. For example, if we move in, that's how we derived the throw from a fist attack. This is very unlikely. It's much more likely that if the opponent has closed in a close quarter bear hug situation, then we are close enough to apply the throwing technique much easier. We will continue in this transition, deriving the technique first and then applying it to something in future videos as well. For the moment, we hope we could inspire you, and we hope to see you around next time.